Putin's shocking move, all Russian forces in Ukraine to be controlled by the Ministry of Defense. Explosions rock Russian airfield near Belarusian capital, Russian aircraft damaged? Belarusian activists claim responsibility for drone attack on Russian A-50 aircraft in bold move against Lukashenko's allies. Russian deputy chairman warns of nuclear war with catastrophic consequences over Ukraine arms supply. Japan's bold move to counter China and North Korea, 400 Tomahawk missiles acquired from the U.S. Enjoy watching and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on important news. Putin allows Defense Ministry to reassert control over all Russian forces in Ukraine. The Ministry of Defense of Russia has been authorized by Vladimir Putin to take back control over all Russian forces present in Ukraine, according to the Institute for the Study of War, ISW. The ISW has identified various occurrences that suggest Putin's plan to consolidate all Russian forces under the management of the Ministry of Defense of Russia. These include Putin's appointment of Gerasimov as the overall theater commander, which subordinated Surovikin to him, as well as the Ministry of Defense's integration of the DPR and LPR Army Corps into the conventional Russian military. The Ministry of Defense is also allegedly taking steps to restrict Wagner from receiving state ammunition and to prohibit millbloggers from operating on the front lines, among other measures. The ISW believes that Putin is preparing the Russian people for a prolonged and difficult war and recognizes that only the Russian MOD can maintain the significant mechanized forces required to achieve his goals in Ukraine. Andriy Yusov, a representative of the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine, disclosed that Putin instructed Valery Gerasimov, the recently appointed commander of the occupation forces in Ukraine, to capture Donbass by March. Series of explosions rock military airfield in Belarus, Bipol reports. Residents in Machalishi, located 12 kilometers from the Belarusian capital Minsk, reportedly heard at least 2 forceful blasts at the military airfield, where Russian air forces are stationed, according to the Belarusian organization Bipol. Bipol was formed by former law enforcement employees to counter the Belarusian government. Bipol stated that 2 explosions occurred at the Machalishi airfield at approximately 8 a.m. and 9:30 a.m. today. As per Bipol, a Russian military aircraft was allegedly harmed as a result of the blasts. The organization claimed that the Berev A-50 airborne early warning and control aircraft used by the Russian military suffered significant damage from the explosions. Machalishi locals observed a large number of military and traffic police vehicles in the vicinity of the airfield. The Belarusian police is reportedly inspecting all passing cars in the area, according to Bipol. The Russian air forces frequently utilized the Machalishi airfield to carry out missile assaults on Ukraine. Russian military aircraft blown up near Minsk, Belarusian partisans. On February 27, activists opposing the Belarusian government have taken accountability for what they asserted was a drone assault on a Russian A-50 surveillance aircraft stationed at an airfield close to the capital city of Minsk. According to Alexander Azarov, the leader of the Belarusian anti-government group Bipol, the drones were used in the attack and were controlled by Belarusian participants. Azarov's statement was published on Bipol's Telegram messaging app and was also broadcasted on the Belsat news channel in Poland. He further stated that the operators of the drones are presently secure and outside of the country. The report of the alleged drone attack on a Russian A-50 surveillance aircraft at an airfield near Minsk has not been independently verified by Reuters. Neither Russia nor Belarus have officially confirmed the attack, and their defense ministries have not responded to requests for comment. Bipol, an anti-government organization in Belarus that includes former law enforcement officers supporting opposition politicians, claimed responsibility for the attack. Alexander Azarov, the group's leader, said that the participants in the operation were Belarusian and were now safe outside the country. Belsat, A Polish broadcaster focused on Belarusian news that Minsk has labeled extremist also reported the claim. The attack reportedly caused damage to the front and central parts of the aircraft, as well as the radar antenna. The Berev A-50 aircraft, also known as Mainstay, is a Russian airborne early warning aircraft capable of tracking up to 60 targets at a time. There have been several acts of sabotage in Belarus and Russian regions bordering Ukraine since Russia's invasion of Ukraine a year ago, particularly on the railway system. President Alexander Lukashenko of Belarus has allowed Russian forces access to use territory as a staging post at the beginning of the invasion, but has not taken a direct part in Russia's war on Ukraine. Russia and Belarus have set up a joint military unit in Belarus and conducted numerous exercises. A number of Russian warplanes and airborne early warning and control aircraft have been deployed to Belarus. Belarusian opposition leader Svetlana Tsikhanouskaya praised the alleged attack, calling it the most successful act of sabotage since the beginning of 2022 and expressed pride in Belarusians who continue to resist the Russian occupation of Belarus and fight for Ukraine's freedom. The Belarusian human rights group Vyasna reported that a woman was detained in Machulishi, but the reason for her detention and her whereabouts are unknown. Detentions are common in Belarus, even for minor offenses such as comments on social media, especially after Lukashenko's crackdown on mass pro-democracy protests in 2020, which resulted in the imprisonment or forced exile of leading opposition figures. Arms supplies to Kyiv threaten global nuclear catastrophe. Dmitry Medvedev, the deputy chairman of the Russian Security Council, warned that continued arms supply to Kyiv could result in a catastrophic nuclear war. Medvedev, a close aide to President Vladimir Putin, made this statement in response to Putin's recent warning about nuclear conflict over Ukraine, which he described as an existential battle for the survival of Russia and its people. Medvedev repeated his threat of nuclear war if Western countries continue to arm Ukraine, despite repeated warnings from Moscow. He stated that the influx of weapons could continue and prevent any possibility of restarting negotiations. He also accused Russia's enemies of refusing to understand that their actions would lead to a total fiasco, resulting in a collapse and apocalypse where people would forget their former lives for centuries until the rubble ceased to emit radiation. Medvedev made these remarks in the daily newspaper. Japan to buy 400 Tomahawk missiles from U.S., PM Kishida. On Monday, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida announced that Japan will acquire 400 Tomahawk missiles from the United States in an effort to strengthen